Evening, sir. Can I talk to you for a second? Just keep your hands where I can see them.
Sure, they're right here.
Appreciate that. Where are you coming from tonight?
Just grabbed a drink inside, headed home.
All right. Mind staying put a moment?
No problem.
His father had spent years preparing him for a moment like this. Keep your hands visible. Keep your voice calm. Do not give them a reason. Gene did everything right. Every single thing. And they slammed him against that car anyway. But here is what they did not account for. Some fathers do not wait for the morning. Some fathers come that same night. Before we get into this, if this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button right now. We tell the stories that do not make the evening news. Drop a comment and tell me where you are watching from. And if this story hits you the way it hit me, like the video. It takes 1 second and it helps more people find this channel. Alright, let us get into it. The night was the kind of quiet that belongs to late hours in small commercial strips, the particular stillness of a city that has not gone to sleep so much as turned down its volume. Gene came through the Bonders convenience store's glass door at 11:19 in the evening. The door swung shut behind him with the soft mechanical exhale it always made, the same sound it had made every other time he had pushed through it over the past 2 years. He came here often. The store was 3 blocks from his apartment, close enough to walk, familiar enough that the man behind the counter knew his usual without being asked. He was wearing a dark hoodie, clean white sneakers, dark jeans. A small paper bag hung from his right hand. Inside it, a single bottle of water and a receipt for $1.49. His left hand was at his side. He was not on the phone. He was not running. He was not looking over his shoulder or scanning the lot with the restless energy of a man with something to hide. He was 22 years old, and he was going home. The parking lot held 4 cars and a shopping cart someone had left near the far curb. A single streetlight at the end of the lot flickered in the way streetlights flicker when their time is almost up, not dark, not fully bright, just uncertain. Gene moved across the asphalt with the unhurried ease of a man whose mind had already arrived at his apartment and was simply waiting for his body to catch up. He was thinking about nothing more consequential than whether he had left his phone charger on the kitchen counter. He did not hear the patrol car enter the lot. Officer Brett's vehicle came in from the side entrance, slow, deliberate. The kind of approach that has no dispatch call behind it and no particular destination in front of it. Brett had been on patrol for 4 hours. The shift had been unremarkable. No calls of note. No reported incidents in this sector. No description from dispatch matching any individual in the area. Brett saw Gene cross the lot. Something in him decided before a single fact was gathered. The narrator cannot tell you what that something was because Brett himself would later struggle to name it under oath. What the record shows, what the body cam clipped to Brett's chest was already capturing in high-definition color, is a young black man in a dark hoodie walking across an almost empty parking lot toward his car, holding a paper bag, doing nothing. Brett pulled the vehicle to a slow stop. He put it in park. He looked at his partner. Officer Tully looked back at him with the expression of a man who has learned not to ask questions he does not want to answer. Brett opened his door. Gene heard the car door and turned. He saw the uniform. He saw the approach. And in the space of a single breath, before a word had been spoken in either direction, he made a set of decisions that his father had spent years quietly rehearsing with him at the kitchen table, in the car. In the deliberate pauses of ordinary conversation, he stopped walking. He turned to face the officer fully. He moved his hands away from his body, visible, open, away from his pockets. He stood still. Brett reached him in 6 strides. He did not introduce himself, did not explain the stop. He asked Gene where he was coming from in the tone people use when the answer has already been decided. Gene answered. He stated the name of the store. He stated that he lived 3 blocks away. He stated his name clearly and without hesitation, the full name, first and last. The name his father had given him, and the name that appeared on every document in the life Brett was currently treating as a probable cause. Brett asked for identification. Gene reached slowly into his back pocket. Slowly, deliberately, with the exaggerated care of a man who has been taught that sudden movements in moments like this have consequences that cannot be undone. He produced his wallet. He opened it. He held it out. Brett looked at it for 2 seconds. Then he told Gene to put his hands on the car. Gene did not argue, did not question, did not look at Tully, who had now positioned himself 6 feet to Jean's left with his hands on his belt and his eyes on the middle distance. Jean turned toward the patrol car and placed both hands flat on the hood. The metal was cold. He could feel the vibration of the engine still running beneath his palms. He waited. What happened next took less than 4 seconds. Brett grabbed Jean by the left arm and spun him sideways. The motion was sharp, and without warning, not a controlled escort, not a guided turn, but the kind of force that belongs to a conclusion, not a procedure. Jean's right cheek met the hood of the patrol car. Brett's left knee drove into the back of Jean's thigh, pinning him against the vehicle. His right hand came down on Jean's neck, not a choke, but pressure. The weight of a decision that had been made before the patrol car even stopped rolling. The paper bag hit the ground. The bottle of water rolled out of it slowly, turning once, twice, coming to rest against the front tire of the patrol car. Jean did not cry out, did not struggle, did not give his body permission to do the thing every nerve ending was telling it to do. He stayed flat against the cold metal with his cheek pressed to the hood and his hands pulled back behind him and the cuffs closing around his wrists with 2 hard clicks that the Bodycam microphone picked up clearly. Tully stood 3 feet away. He did not move. Near the store entrance, 4 people had gathered in the glow of the fluorescent sign above the door. They watched. They did not speak. They did not intervene. One of them raised a phone. Another touched her arm and she lowered it. Jean was walked to the rear door of the patrol car. He folded himself into the back seat with the careful, deliberate movements of a man determined not to give the moment anything else to work with. The door closed. Through the window, the parking lot looked ordinary, the flickering streetlight, the shopping cart, the bottle of water still resting against the front tire. Brett got behind the wheel. He did not look at Tully. He pulled out of the lot onto the street and accelerated into the quiet night. The Bodycam on his chest was still recording. Nobody reviewed the footage that night. Nobody thought there was a reason to. He did everything right. Everything his father spent years teaching him. Hands visible, voice calm, no resistance, not one wrong move, and they still put his face against that car. Drop A in the comments if this makes your blood boil, because it should. Stay with me. The holding area smelled of industrial cleaner and recycled air. The kind of institutional smell that accumulates over years of the same surfaces being wiped with the same solution under the same humming lights, not unclean, just stripped of everything human. Jean sat on a metal bench with his back straight and his hands resting on his knees. The hoodie had a small tear at the left shoulder where the seam had given under the force of the grab. His wrists showed faint red lines where the cuffs had pressed during the ride over. He had not complained about the cuffs. He had not spoken during the drive. He had looked straight ahead through the metal partition and thought about his father. The quality of Jean's silence in that room was not the silence of a man who had been broken. It was something more deliberate than that, the silence of someone who understood, with absolute clarity, that every word spoken in a room like this becomes material, and that the most powerful thing available to him right now was the discipline to say nothing that could be taken and reshaped into something it was not. He had been told he could make one call. He did not reach for the phone. Immediately, he sat with it in front of him, and he thought. He turned over the evening in his mind, with the methodical patience of a man taking inventory not of grievances, but of facts. What had happened? In what order? What the camera on Brett's chest would have captured if anyone looked at it? What the receipt in the paper bag said? What time the store's own cameras would show him entering and leaving? He thought about all of it. Then he picked up the phone and dialed. It rang twice. Judge Pierce answered on the second ring. The narrator will not tell you what was said in that call, because what was said belongs to a father and a son and the particular grief of a moment that should never have had to exist. What the record shows is that the call lasted 4 minutes and 12 seconds, that Judge Pierce asked 3 questions during it, that his voice, according to Jean, did not waver. That when the call ended, Jean set the phone down on the table in front of him and returned his hands to his knees and resumed his stillness, but with something slightly different in his posture now. Not relief. Not anger. Something closer to the calm of a man who has passed a problem to someone equipped to carry it. 40 minutes. That was all he needed to wait. Down the hall, Brett was at his desk. The arrest report form was open in front of him, and he was filling it out with the focused efficiency of a man who has written versions of this report many times before. The language was practiced. Economic. The report described a subject behaving in a manner consistent with suspicious activity in a commercial parking lot. It described a subject who failed to comply with officer directives. It described a lawful stop, a lawful search, a lawful arrest conducted within departmental guidelines. The word suspicious appeared 4 times across 2 pages. The report did not mention the paper bag, did not mention the bottle of water, did not mention that the subject had produced identification without being asked twice, had kept both hands visible from the moment the patrol car stopped, had answered every question in a measured voice, and had offered no physical resistance at any point during the encounter. Brett finished it. He initialed the bottom, he walked it down to Captain Slade's office, and set it in the review tray. Slade read it in under 3 minutes. He noted nothing unusual. He approved it with a single signature and set it in the outgoing tray. He had reviewed 11 reports that week with the same efficiency and the same result. The Bodycam footage sat in the department's digital storage system, time-stamped, intact, and entirely unreviewed. Nobody pulled it. Nobody thought to. The narrator steps back from the desk and the report and the signatures and looks at the larger shape of what this night actually was. A young man sits in a holding area 3 corridors away from the officer who put him there. The officer's account of the evening is now official, stamped, filed, moving through the system the way things move through systems procedurally, without friction, because friction requires someone to pause and ask whether the document in front of them reflects what actually happened. Nobody paused. Gene had done everything right. He had followed every instruction his father had given him, the instructions that should not have to exist, that no parent should have to deliver, but that fathers in his father's position learn to give, because the alternative is unthinkable. He had done all of it. And he was still here, in a room that smelled of industrial cleaner, waiting. Because doing everything right was never the guarantee. His father knew that. Gene knew it too. What his father had also taught him in the same quiet voice, at the same kitchen table, was that the truth does not disappear. It waits. It accumulates. And given the right moment and the right door, it walks in on its own. Brett's Bodycam captured every single second of that parking lot. Every second. And he still wrote that report exactly the way he did. Does that surprise you? Type Brett in the comments if you think he deserved everything that came for him, or type system if Brett was just doing what the system built him to do. Share this video. Because Gene's story is not unusual, it is Tuesday. Captain Slade poured a second cup of coffee and opened a third case file. He was unhurried, confident. The night felt like every other night. The front desk phone rang. Nobody answered it on the first ring. The fluorescent light above the entrance flickered once. Then the precinct doors opened. The man who walked through the precinct doors at 11:47 that night was not wearing a robe. He was wearing dark trousers, a gray button-down shirt, and a watch on his left wrist that caught the entrance light as he pushed through the door. He was 54 years old. He was built like a man who had once been an athlete and had never entirely let that version of himself go. He moved through the precinct entrance the way he moved through every room he had ever entered professionally, with the unhurried certainty of someone who understood that authority is not announced, it is simply present. Judge Pierce walked to the front desk. He stated his name. He stated his son's name. He stated the time of the arrest and the location. He stated, in a voice that carried without being raised, that he wanted to speak with whoever had approved the paperwork on that arrest. The desk officer looked up. He looked at the face in front of him. Something moved across his expression, the particular quality of recognition that arrives attached to consequences. He picked up the phone without saying anything further. Captain Slade came around the corner 2 minutes later. He was still holding his coffee cup. The narrator stays on that coffee cup the way it became absolutely still in Slade's hand the moment he saw who was standing at his front desk. The way Slade's pace slowed by a fraction, the way a man slows when his body has processed something that his mind is still catching up to. Judge Pierce looked at him. Slade set the coffee cup down on the counter. What followed was not a confrontation in the way that word is usually understood. There was no shouting, no table struck, no document thrown. Judge Pierce spoke the way he had spoken in courtrooms for 26 years, with precision, with economy, with the particular weight of a man who knows that his words will be repeated verbatim in rooms he is not present in. He described what had happened to his son. He described what the Bodycam footage would show when it was reviewed. He stated that he intended to take his son home that night. He stated that whatever came next would follow its proper course through proper channels, and that he had considerable experience with what those channels looked like from the inside. Slade sent for Brett. Brett came out of the bullpen adjusting his collar. He saw the judge. The narrator does not dwell on what left Brett's face in that moment, the certainty, the confidence, the comfortable weight of a completed report sitting in an outgoing tray because some things do not require description. The absence of color in a face tells its own story. The paperwork was not going to be enough. It had never been going to be enough. Gene was released 51 minutes after his father walked through the door. His property was returned to him in a gray plastic tray, his phone, his keys, his wallet. The receipt for $1.49 from a convenience store, 3 blocks from his apartment. He picked up each item. He put the receipt in his pocket. He walked out of the holding area and found his father standing in the corridor outside. Judge Pierce looked at his son. He looked at the torn shoulder of the hoodie. He looked at the marks on his son's wrists. He said nothing. He put his hand briefly on the back of Gene's neck, the gesture of a father and not a judge, and then they walked together down the corridor, through the double doors, and out into the night. Brett was placed on administrative leave before the end of the shift. Attorney Dana subpoenaed the Bodycam footage 48 hours later. She reviewed it in a conference room on a Tuesday afternoon. Dana, a paralegal and a retired police procedures consultant who had spent 22 years in departmental oversight before entering private practice. They watched the footage 3 times in full, and then went back through specific segments with timestamps. The footage showed Gene's hands visible, open, away from his body from the moment the patrol car stopped rolling to the moment the cuffs closed. It showed him producing identification without resistance. It showed Brett's approach, the grab, the spin, the slam, the knee. It showed the paper bag hitting the ground. It showed the bottle of water rolling to rest against the front tire. It showed Officer Tully standing 3 feet away and not moving. It showed, in clear and unambiguous detail, that the arrest report Brett had filed and the events the Bodycam had recorded were not descriptions of the same encounter. Dana added that discrepancy to the complaint as a separate and distinct count. The complaint ran to 58 pages when filed. It named the city, the department, Officer Brett, and Captain Slade in his supervisory capacity. It attached the Bodycam footage as Exhibit A and Brett's written report as Exhibit B, and let the distance between them speak for itself. Brett was deposed on a Wednesday morning, 6 weeks after the filing. He was asked, line by line, to reconcile his written report with the footage. His attorney objected to the framing of 31 questions across a 4-hour deposition. The transcript noted each objection. It also noted the questions that received non-answers. Tully was deposed separately, on a Thursday, without Brett present. His account of the evening in the parking lot did not align with the report his partner had filed. Captain Slade was deposed about the 3 minutes he had spent reviewing Brett's arrest report before approving it. He was asked whether it was standard practice to approve a report without pulling the associated Bodycam footage. He said that it was. The city's legal team reviewed the evidence and recommended settlement. The city declined. The case went to a jury of 12. The jury deliberated for 4 hours and 9 minutes. $5 million. Unanimous. Brett was terminated the following week. The Internal Affairs Review conducted in the aftermath of the verdict pulled his full departmental history and found 17 prior complaints filed by members of the public over 9 years of service. None of those complaints had resulted in formal disciplinary action. Captain Slade submitted his retirement paperwork 6 weeks after the verdict. It was accepted without comment. The city issued a statement. 2 paragraphs. Gene's name did not appear in it. On the courthouse steps, the afternoon the verdict was announced, Attorney Dana made a brief statement to a small gathering of press. She spoke about the footage, about the report, about the 17 complaints that had accumulated in a file that nobody opened until it was too late to
If justice means something to you, like this video and share it. Let the algorithm know stories like this deserve to be heard. Subscribe so you never miss the next one, because trust me, they keep coming. Comment below what part of this story had you speechless. I will be down there reading. Until next time, stay sharp and never let anyone make you forget who you are.